What's going on, guys? Let me know if you can see me. Let me know if you can hear me. In a temporary setup tonight. Having a cookie. All right. Sorry, I had to finish that cookie. It's a good cookie. Okay, what's going on, guys? Let me know if you can see me, hear me. We should be live on YouTube and Facebook, believe it or not. And we'll get started here talking Cardinals-Royals in a matter of moments, hopefully. Sounds good. Thank you, David, for that comment. Nodlin, what's going on? What does Nodlin mean, by the way? I don't know what that means. Locomotion, you're right. Everyone does deserve a cookie. And my wife made some tonight, so I had like 4. I'm not going to lie to you. Don't worry. I know what that sounded like. It's just sparkling water, though. Ohtani, 35th homer. BC is a Dodger fan in here, I believe. So he's happy to talk about the Ohtani bomb. Last name backwards. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Big win by the Cardinals tonight, no doubt about it. Like the stream. Give me 1 second, and I can tweet the stream so people on Twitter know we're live, and then we'll be off and running. But now you can start. If you comment now, you'll be the first comment I see, right? So get your comments in. What stood out to you most from this game? I want you to give me the team MVP from tonight's Cardinals win. That's my challenge there in the live chat. All you have to do to join the live chat is subscribe, and I hope that during this live stream tonight, we can get us to 4,000 subs on YouTube. We're close. We're real close. My face looks a little washed out. I got to fix the light, but it's going to just be what it is for tonight. That's just going to be what it is. Temporary setup. Normal office is occupied tonight. Give me your Cardinal player of the game, because I think there are at least, at minimum, 3 candidates for it tonight from the big Cardinals win. 8-5 over the Royals. Cardinals beat the Royals 8-5. And we're talking it over on YouTube. Yep. As longtime viewers of the stream know, I can't talk and type different things at the same time. That's always been tough for me. But I think we're good now. We got some answers. I see some Victor. I see some Libby. I think both are correct. And that's not even, neither of those answers mentioned the player with, arguably the most impact in the game, Willson Contreras, 2 homers, 3 for 4, 4 ribbies, on base 4 times. We've been saying, the Cardinals kind of need certain guys to step up. They need to have certain guys emerge, but they also need the guys that have been good to kind of stay good. And we've seen Burley and Contreras sort of fall off the path a little bit recently, not terribly so, but a little bit of a slump by their standards. Well, both of them tonight had nice games. Both of them with 3-hit games tonight. Both of them at least 1 homer. Contreras had to one-up and take the belt back, hit 2 of them. It was cool to see that interaction in the dugout. All right, if everybody can see me, everybody can hear me, we're going to go ahead and get started. Once again, the prompt for the night, give me your team MVP from this game. Let me know what stood out to you about the Cardinals win over the Royals. And make sure you like the stream. We can get it at least to 10 likes, I figure. And subscribe if you haven't, man. We're so close to 4,000 subs. I can feel it in my bones. We can get there tonight if y'all who are unsubscribed can sub. All right, without further ado, let's go ahead and get this thing rolling in 3, 2, and 1. What's going on, everyone, and welcome into this edition of B-Schaeff Daily Live. Brenden Schaeffer with you here. It is Friday night, August 9th, 2024. The Cardinals made the trek to the other side of the state of Missouri in Kansas City this evening, and boy, oh boy, was it a productive trip, at least for the first game, as the Cardinals knock off the Royals 8-5. And in come-from-behind fashion, I sent the tweet earlier tonight because I had tabulated this up today. Miles Mikolas, a lot of people, there's frustration with Miles' season. I think part of it is based on the contract and feeling like he's being paid a lot of money for not a lot of performance. And on the year coming into tonight, there had been 6 games in which Mikolas had allowed 5 or more earned runs. The Cardinals were 0-6 in those games. and I don't think it is even necessarily earned runs, just runs in general. But that was the stat. And tonight, all 5 were earned that he gave up, only got through 4 innings. And so I said, let's wait and see. What will the Cardinals produce this time? Would it be the first win in which Miles had that kind of game this year and the Cardinals were able to get the run support to turn it into a win for the team? And that's exactly what happened. Unbelievable moment for the rookie Victor Scott II. Like that to me, I know Willson hit 2 homers, and the second one was a moonshot. Just an absolute bomb by Contreras. Burley hit one. Great to see the contributions. Those guys have been doing it all year. For Victor Scott to have the moment that he did, and it was the go-ahead moment, that was, to me, the moment of the game. But you could also make a case that the performance of the night was Matthew Liberatore. Because after Miles has his struggles tonight, no doubt about it, 8 hits, 5 runs in 4 innings, only had 3 strikeouts. Libby goes out and covers innings 5, 6, and 7, doesn't give up a hit, allows only 1 walk, and struck out 3 in one of the better outings we've seen from him this season. And it prompted me to send the tweet that I think is very true of Matthew Liberatore and the way that his season has gone. The best version of Libby is absolutely filthy and untouchable. But getting that version to emerge more than every once in a while is the challenge, and that's the one the Cardinals face. But when he's on, he's got intoxicating stuff, makes you want to buy in. Well, what we saw from Libby tonight makes you want to buy in and say, hey, what could he do? Could he be a lockdown reliever? Could he be an Andrew Miller type of reliever when Andrew Miller was in his prime with Cleveland and even with the Yankees? Is that something that, what could Matthew Liberatore do? I think the Cardinals finding that role for him is probably priority number 1 as it pertains to Libby, is just get him into a role that he can have some consistency with. We've blamed the Cardinals a fair bit for the usage of Libby and the fact that he has not had that consistency to be able to sort of develop around his niche in the Cardinals organization and on this roster. But at a certain point, it is up to the player to be able to repeat the good performances when he has them. Can he do it again the next time? And Libby, this was certainly one to build off, so we'll see for him moving forward. But you know what? Even if this ends up being a one-off for Matthew Liberatore, it was a big night for him because Cardinals don't win the game without the performance they got from him. 3 innings came at the perfect time, and it allowed the Cardinals to have a little bit of time to work their way back into the game. They put up the 1 run in the 6th inning, and then, of course, the 8th inning moment for Victor Scott II, liner down the right field line, and then you had Willson Contreras with his 2-run bomb. Cardinals were not able to add on there in the top of the 9th inning beyond the home run, but that's really all they ended up needing. Had plenty of cushion there for Helsley to do what he does. And again, a little bit of a shaky one for Helsley just in terms of base runners, allowed 2 of them to reach, and the tying run does come to the plate there in the bottom of the 9th. But golly, 37 saves and 40 chances for Helsley. He's been really, really strong and pretty efficient tonight. I mean, 13 pitches is all he needed in facing the 5 batters that he faced. You get Vinny P to ground into the game-ending double play. That certainly will play, and the Cardinals get the win. Guys, let me know your thoughts. What are you thinking about this Cardinals win? This is one they needed to have simply to kind of keep those vibes rolling of what they were doing in the early portions of that Rays series. To lose the way that they did yesterday, it's not that they played so poorly. A couple things didn't go their way, hit into some rough luck. I remember that 9th inning on Thursday. Pete Fairbanks, the St. Louis native and the Mizzou product, their closer, playing his former, or I shouldn't say his former, but his hometown team from St. Louis. They put good swings on him, honestly, in the 9th inning yesterday and just didn't have anything to show for it. You had the moment yesterday where Mason Wynn doubled and Victor Scott would have scored, but had to go back to third base because it was a ground rule double. Ball skipped over the left field wall. Just little things like that happening to the Cardinals late yesterday. I got the sense based on the fact that the B-Shape Daily podcast for yesterday didn't get that many views, which is fine. But I thought it was kind of interesting because, and we did a live stream later on last night. So maybe that was part of the reason because some people probably watched it live. But it was one of those deals where I'm thinking, this is a game that Cardinals fans that are reasonable understand why they lost. It's not that it was the manager's fault, and it's not that, whatever rambunctious reasoning you could come up with to be angry about it. I just don't feel like that was the vibe last night of that loss. People generally understood Cardinals played pretty well, and baseball got the better of them on that night. And it was a tough time to have that because you rarely get these opportunities to sweep, especially the Cardinals this year just haven't seen it that often. And it would have been a nice one to get. But to be able to come right back, turn the page, and beat a Royals team that came into the game tonight 12 games over 500, Really notable win tonight for the Cardinals, and the way they did it too, I think important. If you're awarding an Olympic podium, I think your three guys on the podium are Libby, Contreras, and Victor Scott. Obviously, Burley with 3 hits had a really nice game. There were others that you could have said contributed. Donovan had a 3 for 5 day. Goldie 2 for 4. But for me, the one swing by Scott, even though it was the only hit he had in the game, was a big one. The go-ahead swing, and just oozing confidence after that swing. It felt like a season's worth of frustration for Victor Scott was kind of relinquished from his body in that one moment. And we'll see if that's something he can build upon. Obviously, he already hit the home run earlier this week, and so that was good to see from him. Can he continue to take damaging swings like that from the bottom of the Cardinals order? If the answer to that is yes, I mean, that he could be that type of dynamic threat in the lineup, and a guy who also obviously plays great defense that we thought he could be when he first came up at the beginning of the year. And he got his feet wet. He learned a lot about himself, I'm sure. Had to go back down to AAA, and even down there struggle for a while. It hasn't been a very productive season overall for Vic, but recently he's made some swing changes and is starting to see the fruit of that labor. And for it to happen at the big league level at this point is just icing on the cake. So really good game tonight by the Cardinals, even though they didn't get a great start from Miles Mikolas. Let me know your thoughts. I'm going to get into the comments here in just a moment after I take a sip of water. Jen, appreciate the super chat. She said she loves that Brett is calling it crisp. Yeah, we know the Cardinals have had their issues with runners in scoring position this season. That was still the case tonight. If you look at the stats, only 1 for 12 with RISP tonight. But as Jen likes to remind everybody, it's actually not RISP, it's crisp. Cardinals runners in scoring position is the way that we like to frame it on the podcast. Even sometimes I forget, but Jen's always there to remind me. Bill was all over it. He said the crisp was still bad, and tonight it was. 1 for 12. It happens, but sometimes you'll have the good games with RISP. Sometimes you'll have the games where you hit dingers, and tonight was one of the dinger kind of games for the Cardinals. 2 from Willson. My goodness, I still can't get over the bomb in the 9th inning. That was crushed. Just a no-doubter off the bat. And Burley to get his, and, Victor Scott's was a big swing, obviously. I think that was the one hit with RISP, the 2-run double that put the Cardinals back ahead. So very good to see there. It was indeed the Battle of Missouri. They call it the I-70 series around here, BC. Owen says that was a moonshot Contreras had tonight. It was majestic in every sense of the word. David wants my thoughts on Gorman. I know he had a double, but I don't really feel good about him. Yeah, I was getting texts about Gorman too, and maybe people were interpreting my tweet the wrong way. I want to pull that up so that I can make sure to contextualize and explain exactly what I meant when I made a commentary on the Pages pinch hitting opportunity for Gorman. Gorman was 1 for 3. He had the double, as was mentioned there in the chat. But there was that spot where Pages came in to pinch hit. And the inning right now is escaping me. But it was with Will Smith, the lefty reliever for the Royals, in the game. So I could probably counter-produce this for you. I think it was the 7th, if I'm not mistaken. Will Smith it must have been the 8th. Yeah, it must have been the 8th because he ended up getting charged with those runs. So that was the midst of the Cardinals rally that was capitalized with the Victor double, right? So it was the 8th inning, and lefty on the mound. Although Gorman had the 1 for 3 night with the double, I think it's the right move for Ollie Marmol to go to the bench and look for a right-handed pinch hitter against the lefty Smith there. However, with the way they're constructed right now, you're kind of limited on your options, right? With Tommy Pham starting tonight instead of Lars Nootbaar, which is not something I had a huge issue with. And look, after he goes 0 for 5, did have an RBI, but had a couple of strikeouts. Maybe we don't see that as much moving forward, but I think it was worth a shot because Pham had been so good so far that you put him in there for a right-on-right and kind of see what it looks like. I was okay with that. Nootbaar has been struggling offensively. I didn't have a huge issue with the decision to go ahead and put Tommy in there. Now, they put him down at the bottom of the lineup, batted him 8th, but it was that right-on-right, and because of that, it meant you just didn't really have any right-handed threat off the bench other than your backup catcher, Pedro Pages. He was the only right-handed bat off the bench. And so Ollie said, Don't care if he's my backup catcher. He's who we need for that spot because it's the platoon split, and that's what it's got to be. So goes with it, draws the walk, but I felt compelled to tweet about it because I said this: Pages batting for Gorman draws the walk. He did his job. But Pages batting for Gorman is a statement that implies the need for roster moves. Backup catcher Pages being the best option off the bench for that plate appearance, and I think he was, feels like a cry for help. Like if Ollie Marmol is putting Pages into that spot, which is not me saying, oh, Pages, he's no good. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that's your backup catcher. That's not usually a move. That's not usually your first right-handed bat off the bench. Yes, he loaded up his lineup with the other righties on the roster because that's just the decision that was made. It's not like they were facing a lefty. You'd see that against a lefty more often where Pham would be in there. But Pham has been swinging it well, and this was a spot they wanted to give him. I don't have an issue with it when Nootbaar especially has not been performing. That was kind of the guy that sat instead. So it's one of those deals where I've said this, if you've been listening to B-Schaeff Daily since the trade deadline, I basically have said I think the Cardinals are still one right-handed bat short of having true balance on the roster. Now, I'm not really inclined to just tell you they need to DFA Matt Carpenter. They need to DFA Brandon Crawford. Like, that's not really what I'm trying to get at with this. There are a few ways that you could go about it, and I don't necessarily think it matters, especially which way they choose. Gorman being sent to Memphis would be one of those options, right? If it's Sajaci that comes up, yes, they would need a 40-man move, but Sajaci's been swinging it better recently in AAA. I'll pull up the Memphis box score to see if there's anything notable that's happened there tonight as we go along. But that's sort of one of the options. Carpenter has honestly done his job as far as I am concerned. His numbers are fine, and he's been basically what you would want him to be for the role that you assigned him when they brought him in. Crawford, look, they signed him to be the backup shortstop to Mason Wynn, and he's been that, but offensively, obviously limited. And I still maintain that if you had a right-handed version of everything else Brandon Crawford is giving you, it would be less glaring. But to not even really have that role be a threat off the bench for a late game at bat when you need a righty off the bench, because you're always going to have lefties off the bench. Your whole bench is teaming with them. So if you needed a late spot, Carp could take that spot. That's where the redundancy kind of comes in. And on the days that Gorman sits, it's okay. He's going to be that guy. And tonight, Nootbaar was obviously on the bench until he came in for defense after, or I believe he pinch ran for Pages and then stayed in for defense. But it's just they're one away from being balanced. And so is Gorman the way that they could achieve that by sending him to Memphis where he's going to play every day? I think that's a possibility. But I'm also looking at it like, well, Gorman went 1 for 3 tonight. He had the double. Yeah, he struck out once. Technically lowered his K percentage on the season by only striking out once tonight in 3 ABs. So, that's sort of the crux of the issue. And I think if you're Ollie Marmol, there's more utility to having a righty off the bench. I'm not at liberty to say, oh, it's Brandon Crawford, got to kick him to the curb. I don't think the Cardinals are inclined to want to do that, but it could be those types of tough decisions as I talked about with Josh Jacobs today on philosophical differences, which you can check out on the YouTube channel. If you haven't seen it yet, could be some good listening for tonight because after we're done, you can just go right into that. We talked for like an hour this afternoon, and we'll continue to do that every Friday. Josh Jacobs, of course, of Dealing the Cards, which you should subscribe to their channel as well if you haven't done so yet. But that's kind of where it boils down to for me. Gorman, he wasn't defensive tonight, right? 1 for 3, had a double, was pulled in the spot that makes sense to pull him when they have a tough lefty coming out of the bullpen. But is there a world in which you can look at that and say, the problem isn't pinch hitting for Gorman, it's maybe that you didn't have anybody other than your backup catcher to take the spot? And does that send a message to John Mozeliak of like, look, man, this is the roster. Like, I don't have any issue with Ollie Marmol putting Pages in that spot. You as the manager have to be able to go to a righty off your bench. And look, I saw a comment that basically said, well, it's the manager's fault because he put Pham in the lineup. Pham's supposed to be there for that spot. Sometimes Pham might be a guy that should play every day. Like, this was a fair chance to give him. He went over, and that's going to happen. But I'm not going to blame Ollie for starting Pham and therefore not having him for the bench opportunity. In some games, you're going to have to start Pham because he's been your best hitter. So to me, that's not really the path mentally that I would take with this and the narrative that I would spin. I think it's okay to say they just need another righty off the bench, and it's not an indictment on Carpenter or even Crawford. I mean, you could make the case that it could be on Crawford because he hasn't performed offensively. But look, for some people that might be I'm not even that worried about it being the backup catcher, but Herrera is a better hitter than Pages. I agree with that sentiment. I think Pages actually doesn't get enough credit at the plate. And I think over the course of the next couple of years in the big leagues, you're going to see more and more that Pages can handle the bat. He does a nice job and drew the walk there when he was called upon. So if it's a Herrera for Pages, some people say, well, they're not throwing out base runners anyway. Isn't that why Herrera's not here? Well, I guess you could make that claim, but I don't think it's really Pages' fault or Contreras' fault when they're not getting guys out at second. Andrew Kittredge didn't bother to hold the runner. It happened again tonight, and it's just he's got a very long delivery, so it makes it difficult. But it's something that you're going to have to reckon with, especially when you get into a playoff situation. Like if you do get into a wild card series and Andrew Kittredge is your setup man, you trust him to be able to get the outs. But if he lets somebody on base, it's hard to say a walk is automatically a double, and that's kind of what it is against Kittredge this year. So that makes it a little bit tricky. But there are some who would say just bring up Herrera because he could give you a better AB than Pages in that spot, even though Pages did come through with his walk. So I don't know what it is. The answer is exactly. I think there's, like I said, a couple of ways the Cardinals could go. But I do believe, like, if you're bringing in Pages for that spot, it worked out fine. You're allowed to utilize your backup catcher, but it just seems a little bit glaring that that's your first option off the bench. But it's because he was the only righty off the bench that they had tonight. So depth managing by Ollie Marmol, in my opinion, and it also was a move that kind of calls to attention that there's not a lot of depth there on the right side. I think they need one more righty and one fewer lefty. Whether it's a Crawford thing or a Gorman thing, you can kind of take your pick. But to me, that is something that is a move that I would probably make. Thank you for the super chat. I appreciate you. Said, really good W tonight out at Kauffman. Was there to see it. Live in the Metro KC. Big win, but got to cash in on a big opportunity tomorrow night. Yeah, Saturday is the finale of the series, actually. No game on Sunday. Kind of a weird quirk of the schedule. We saw it last year. I think this is going away next year because the Cardinals and Royals will play 6 games instead of 4 on the 2025 schedule, but that's been sort of the way of it this year and last year as well, is that they're only playing the 2 gamers and therefore have a stray Sunday off. But, yeah, rosters expand, Trevor, September 1st, but they expand to 28, if I'm not mistaken. So you're probably – and I think you can add 1 pitcher, 1 hitter. If they let them add a pitcher, they're going to. If it's just position players, then, obviously you have to add the 2. Who do you think they would bring up when they add to 28? I mean, I'd have to look off the top of my head. Is it MLB roster expansion? I assume the rosters would go to 14 and 14. And if that's the case, you probably bring up somebody like Roycroft, or it's going to be Riley O'Brien, right? Because he's already kind of on the way. And yeah, team can carry 14 pitchers at most. And that means you're going to get 1 pitcher because they're always going to accept the extra bullpen help. It's not going to be 2 hitters more likely than not. So I would say Riley O'Brien because he's close. Although he's probably going to be up before that. So if it's Riley, it'll be for like a Leahy that goes down, and then Leahy comes back on September 1st. We're splitting hairs there. And then offensively, look, I think Jordan Walker is going to play again for the Cardinals this year. So for the moment, I would say him because he's on the 40-man. And I think once the AAA season is winding down, it's not like you can get him a bunch of at-bats there anymore. They do go to like mid-September, I think. But, yeah, I think Walker will be back if I had to guess. But you could also, if there are other moves, there will be injuries. Like between now and September 1 is a solid 3 weeks, right? So there will be injuries and things that we are not anticipating that are going to shape that roster decision. Doug said Kittredge hasn't held anyone all year. Hell, nobody in the bullpen is. Yeah, it's been a glaring issue. We've kept talking about it. We'll keep talking about it. Something that I think at spring training is going to be a huge focus next year. It's not that it wasn't this year. They do it every year, but I think clearly they're going to have to revamp the program on that a little bit because it's just been a really trying season for holding base runners. And look, it's also coinciding. It's been a couple of years now since you've had Yadier Molina, who was a one-man wrecking crew in holding runners and managing the run game himself. His reputation alone, guys just didn't run on the Cardinals. Like the stat and the graphic that they would used to show on the broadcast is unbelievable. How much fewer, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but the limited number of stolen base attempts teams even had against the Cardinals for like a 15-year period when Yachty was here. And it's like the Cardinals had like way fewer stolen bases against because teams didn't even try it, right? Like Yadi's numbers were good catching base runners, but his reputation alone meant they didn't even attempt it. So that was part of it too. The Grave of Einstein hopping in with a 1-month membership. Hilariously, they were still 1 for 12 with RISP. Yep, the one that they got was good, and you hit some bombs, so that's makes it possible. Bill wants to know who the other outfielder is at Memphis. I mean, they have Koperniak down there. He can play center, mostly plays the corners. And Victor has been in center, obviously. Koperniak has moved back to center now that Victor is up here. And honestly, Fermin has been getting opportunity. He played left field tonight for Memphis. They lost 9-3, by the way. So, yeah, that's kind of the way I view it. Brett says, I know it's only a month till rosters expand, but man, oh man, do I wish we didn't have Crawford and Karp both taking up bench spots. Like I said, and I get it. It's a hard thing. It's a hard conversation because those are valuable members of the Cardinals. Like if you're a Cardinals fan, it's like, dude, those are guys on your team. You know what I mean? That being said, specific to Crawford, I feel like there is a Sajaci waiting in the wings to potentially fill that role, but from the right side. It's really no more spiteful than that. It doesn't have to be about, oh, Crawford's this, he's that. Like I don't really think that's in good form. But could Sajaci do a similar role but then also provide them something off the bench that they don't have? Because let's be honest, like how often is the backup to Mason Wynn really going to see action if that's his only role? Mason Wynn's an everyday wrecking crew right now. And, there's not as much utility to whatever his backup is there to do because he's mostly there to hang out. If he at least had a right-handed bat that could provide the Cardinal bench something it doesn't possess already on a daily basis, now suddenly you've got value and you've got utility to that. Now, so JC has only played some shortstop, but, I think he could fill in. It's not like he would be the everyday guy, but that would be, I guess, the concern is like you make the move and Crawford's no longer with the organization and then an injury happens and it's like, who's the everyday shortstop? I think that is enough to keep the Cardinals from kind of pressing that button. Now, is that the correct thought process? Maybe not, because you could make the case that, well, if Crawford's out there every day, that's not going to necessarily be an ideal circumstance either. So to act like that's what you're saving him for would maybe be counterproductive, counterintuitive. Trevor says Willson and Burleson are the two that make the offense go. It's felt like that for a good long while now. Yeah, I mean, tonight they both had 3 hit games. Credit to Goldie, his 2 for 4, scored a run. He was on base 3 times. Donnie, 3 for 5. I had made the comment on the radio this afternoon that against Michael Lorenzen, with the way the Cardinal lineup was setting up, you were going to need production from the lefties. Burleson, Donovan, and Gorman would have to have big games. I said that on the big show on KTGR today. Well, Burley 3 for 5 with a homer, Donovan 3 for 5, and Gorman 1 for 3. I would say those guys met the mark in this game. The lefties carried the load, and little did we know there were going to be some big games from Contreras and Goldschmidt as well from the right side. But yeah, you can kind of tell, man, when you think about the way these games set up and the lineup comes out, it's not like I was Nostradamus. It just, if the Cardinals were going to win, it was going to have to come from the lefties today with the way that it matched up, and they held their own and then some. Allison asked my thoughts on bullpen management. It worked out in our favor, but does it leave us thin for tomorrow? No, I don't have any. I thought the bullpen management was great. I mean, he threw 4 innings, and that I think was honestly like he was only at 78 pitches, but it was performance based. He was getting hit around in the 3rd and 4th inning. So for Ollie to say, hey, we're going to go to Libby and try to get him to be the bridge and find a way to stay in this ball game, I thought was brilliant. And Libby was fantastic. So it got you through the 7th, and then you go Kittredge Helsley because it's a save situation. Yeah, 100%. I don't think there's any other way to do it. You can't, the phrase is a bird in the hand, right? Better than 2 in the bush. And in this case, it would only be 1 in the bush. To say, well, we got to save Helsley for the game that might be a 2-run lead tomorrow. You don't know if it's going to be. And when you're in the save situation, you pitch him. And the same thing for Kittredge. Kittredge didn't pitch yesterday. He's there to pitch. Is he going to be unavailable tomorrow because now he's pitched 3 out of 4? Definitely is a possibility. But the Cardinals are not at a luxurious point where they can just make a decision on, well, maybe we try Leahy here in the 9th. Like, you just can't. You gotta throw your best. And again, it's why I reiterate, Ollie is managing the roster he was given. You could make a case that having one more reliable, trusted reliever, like think about all the relievers that were traded at the deadline. if you get, the median version of them and a decent one, and like think about like the John Brebbias even. I don't know if Brebbia is that much better than Sean Armstrong, but they clearly have not rolled Armstrong into a role where they're like, yep, you're leverage. And maybe that's correct, right? He hasn't had a great season. But that's sort of the way I look at it. They have to throw these guys because they've got to secure these wins. Unfortunately, tonight would have been the night where you could have perhaps saved some of your leverage guys based on how many runs you scored. You score 8, you'd like to think that the game is a win beyond even a save chance. But Mikolas had a bad start. And so because of that, you're right back into the situation you're always in, which is 3 or less run lead, you got to use your closer. But I think when you have a closer that the Cardinals do, it's a luxury to be able to know that you're pretty much going to win that game. Justin says Mike Antico, the center fielder for Memphis. He is an outfielder for Memphis. He did not start tonight, and center Koperniak did. But yeah, Antico can play center as well. The Grave of Einstein says the Liberatore cycle is bad time starting, move to the bullpen, balls out in the bullpen. Well, he's performing good. We need that kind of arm in the rotation, reset. It's usually more because of the circumstances sometimes that they have to do it that way, the Grave of Einstein, but that is funny. That is a comment that makes me chuckle. Korn, welcome in. He said go Birds, but he's going to start back at the beginning of the live stream because he just doesn't want to miss anything. It's the kind of guy he is. Libby is a bullpen arm, and you cannot convince me otherwise. He came out and looked strong tonight. That was from Brett. Yeah, but he did it over 3 innings tonight. Honestly, I don't think it's bullpen starter that matters. I'm starting to think with Libby, it's just he's got to get his head right. He's got to have the right mentality coming into an outing, and he always intends to, but you can just see that it looks different sometimes. Tonight it looked different in a good way. And this was a relief opportunity. I don't know why it's different from some relief opportunities or some starts or whatever. He's had starts where he finds out 10 minutes before the game, and he ends up doing okay. Like, I don't know if it's starter or reliever. I think it's just general. Libby's got to find himself in a good place, and when he does, he can be really tough to beat. He saved the Cardinals bacon tonight. They don't win this game if he doesn't hold it very steady for 3 innings. Jen says, what's with Pham not swinging when the bases were loaded in the 9th? Yeah, I think, Jen, after that strikeout looking, I think I said, and I quote, you got to swing. I said it to my TV, nobody in particular, but I said, you got to swing there. And I think he just got caught guessing and got fooled. Another part of the game where he got fooled, and this should not be overlooked, the most athletic thing that Victor Scott did tonight was not the double into right field. It was getting the hell out of Tommy Pham's way at the last possible second when Pham blatantly ignored Victor calling him off for that fly ball in right center. The inning escapes me. It was late in the game, but y'all know exactly what I was talking about. I was like, oh my gosh, that could have been a dangerous collision. And Pham wasn't, to me, that's unless Victor was whispering, I got it, which his body language indicated he was screaming because he was doing this. He made it very clear that that was his ball. Unless he was just whispering, and Pham obviously was tracking the ball so he couldn't see the arm waving, it was just a bad play by Pham. I mean, the center fielder, I get it. He's a rookie. You've been around for a long time. That's a bad look by Tommy, I think. And I get why it happens. Tommy's like, well, I'm here. I'm going to catch it. But you got to remember the communication part. Victor was doing his part to say, hey, I'm tracking this. He's not looking over there to his left to see if Tommy Pham is converging on the ball too. He's trying to direct traffic and call the ball. And I could see from the other side of the state that Victor wanted the ball. So for Victor to notice at the last moment, like Tommy's not giving ground here and dive out of the way without anybody getting hurt was actually legitimately impressive. If anybody caught that, let me know, because that was my impression from that moment when I saw it live. Do the Cardinals officially have a new homer celebration with the WWE belt? Yes, Cardinals Nation, they do. Burley told us in the clubhouse on what day was that? Wednesday, when I was at Busch. He met Randy Orton, said it was the most starstruck he would ever be to meet anybody in terms of a celebrity, because he was a big WWE, big wrestling fan as a kid. Said he would do the RKO to like stuffed toys and like a practice dummy or whatever on the trampoline in his backyard. That was, the whole thing for Burley, and was excited about meeting Randy Orton, and said, got the belt. Well, how do you earn the belt? A reporter asked him, and he said, well, we didn't get any of them tonight, so I guess you'll see. Clearly the homer. And so he trades it back and forth off with Contreras. Contreras hit 2 homers. Burley had the 1, and Willson ends the night with the belt. So I think that is kind of a fun home run celebration. I think it's good for teams to have those sorts of things, even if it's corny and goofy. Anything that kind of gets the camaraderie going for the guys, I think I'm actually all for it. Even if the cornier, the better, honestly, in those spots. Trevor wants to know about the routes Victor has been taking in the outfield. He's been good in my eyes. Came just short of robbing the home run at the wall yesterday. The route was fine on that. The jump was good. He just it was over the wall further than he was going to be able to do, and his arm kind of got caught, I felt like, and almost limited his ability to rise up, if that's making sense. It was off the tip of the glove, basically. But no, his routes have been good. He's played a really solid center field and just had a really good catch on Monday. Going back to the Mets game, really one of the 2 good things that happened in that game, shallow center field, sinking liner. It just had to immediately have a great first step and still almost didn't get there. Had to lay out. That was a really impressive catch. So, yeah, I think he's been great in center. Andy, what's going on? He said, what's up, Schaeff? Damian, what's up? Didn't know you were going live until I turned YouTube on. Willson is the MVP tonight. It's hard to argue against the guy that hit 2 homers, But Nodland says VS2 if we're going for clutch. Libby was great. Willson was great. Yeah, that's the podium. In the spirit of the Paris Olympics, that's the podium for sure. But David said it was easily Victor. Bill liked Libby. Dennis liked Victor for the MVP. Witt Jr. not destroying us. That was Nimbus. He said maybe the MVP was Witt Jr., potential top 3 MVP finisher over there in the American League. 0 for 4 tonight. Had a walk, but didn't go crazy. 0 for 3 was Paul DeYoung. Former Cardinal was the DH tonight for the Kansas City Royals. So, yeah, a couple of various thoughts there on who the MVP of this game was for the Cardinals. Let me I got to keep taking my sips of water. Keeps me going. Mike says, I personally think he is still maturing as a pitcher. It needs to be used more consistently. Royals MVP was Mikolas. Yeah, I mean, Miles struggled. You look at his numbers this year, 24 starts. I think half of them have been quality starts. A couple of them have been just as good as quality starts, like 5 2/3, 2 runs, 5 innings, 1 run, that type of deal. So I would say of the 24, he said 14 good ones and 7 definitive bad ones because it's 5 or more runs in each of those 7. And then there's just been a couple in between, that sort of deal. But largely, I mean, look, the Cardinals are now batting 500 in his games. I think they're 12-12 when he starts. Alex says, all hail Victor. Yeah, he had a great game. I get it. 1 for 5, nothing crazy, but plays a good center and had the moment of the game, in my opinion. Even though Wilson's homers were great, Burley's homer great, Libby was more of a collection of moments than one moment in particular. Victor's moment, like you could just tell that was one. He already had the homer the other day, but to have the double and have it be a go-ahead double in the moment late in the game like that, that's a good team-building kind of moment, and you just felt like the Cardinals couldn't lose after that. Like, they got to find a way to bring this one home, was sort of the feeling that inspired. Because this guy, his numbers at the big league level, like, he looks up and sees a batting average, which if you're Victor Scott right now, you just can't look at your batting average. It's 115, though. You know, he's OPSing 360. His numbers in the minors weren't strong either. And so to have a moment like this, it's like, hey, I don't care what the stats say. It's all about what I do from today moving forward. And he's come up with some big moments for the Cardinals this year. Or I should say this week. And this was none bigger than this one that he had tonight. Einstein says Palante's next few starts are very important to whether or not he stays in the rotation, although I've been saying that all season. Yeah, he had a rough one on Monday, and so we'll see what he can come up with tomorrow. But I don't really know how he leaves it unless Lance Lynn comes back really quick. I guess that would be the answer. Steven Matz could be the answer, but I'm a little bit hesitant as well to think the Cardinals are just going to put him right back into the fold. So we'll have to see on that. Neilio says that Andre has to come up big tomorrow night. Yeah, it'd be nice. The Cardinals need to get this one, I think. Grab a quick 2-gamer. It's hard to sweep a 3-game series. You know, they played well against Tampa, and they still only got 2 of 3. But it's a little easier to sweep a 2-gamer. You don't have to play the finale. You just have to play the first two. And look, if they're able to do that, suddenly you'll look up and be able to say, hey, remember that 4 of 5 stretch where they lost 3 or 4 to the Cubs and then to the Mets they lost 1? Well, now they're basically back to 500 in their last 10 because this would be a 4-1, a 4 out of 5 in the other direction after beating the Rays for 2 of 3 and then, obviously the 2 against the Royals if they can come up with them. Yeah, it would be huge. Let's not forget, Victor has the same number of homers in the minors as Jordan Walker. He's a spark plug. Yeah, and Jonathan, you're right that Victor's power surge is not just something that's showed up in the last week in the big leagues. It's happened for him in the minors. Yeah, Einstein, here's what's tough. You guys let me know what I should do. If the Cardinals sweep the Royals by winning on Saturday, do I send the tweet, even though it's only a 2-game series? And Einstein referenced it by saying sweeps are easy, just play 2 games. The way the function of the tweet, the format is sweeps aren't that hard. Just play the ... right? Fill in the blank. Because the phrase is sweeps are hard. When you win the first 2 and you lose the third one, that's because sweeps are hard. But when you sweep, it's like, well, sweeps aren't that hard. Just play play these guys. They're easy to sweep. Clearly, just did it. Now, sometimes when the Cardinals are the team swept, I have to send the tweet. And it has to be just play the Cardinals. And I take no pleasure in that. However, earlier this year, the Cardinals played the Royals twice in one day, and they lost both games. That was the whole series. It was a Wednesday doubleheader, if I'm not mistaken. I did not send the tweet because I thought that would just be piling on. I'm like, well, it was one day, a doubleheader. That's kind of weird. Yeah, Bill, that's the story I'm telling now. I did not send the tweet when the Royals swept the Cardinals in 2 in a one-day series. And I got a little flack for that on the big show on KTGR because we do that show in Columbia. That's mid-Missouri. So you got pretty even split there. It's more Cardinals fans than Royals, I think, in mid-Mo. But obviously Chiefs country for sure, especially with no St. Louis football team anymore. So Einstein, I didn't send it then. So do I send it now? I would be a big hypocrite if I do. But it would be some fun show content on Monday because I feel like I would get some flack for it. But our producer, who is a big Royals fan, is no longer our producer. He moved back to Kansas City. So I guess I can kind of get away with it now. I don't know. We'll see. Laurel wants to know if it's difficult to send Gorman and Newt to Memphis to give him enough at-bats. I think they need to figure out their swings. It wouldn't be difficult. You could do it with either of them in terms of service time. Like there's no rule. There's no 40-man, nothing. You just do it. You send them down. But I don't think Newt Bar is one that they're looking to send down. I think maybe Gorman could happen, but it depends on their appetite for making a 40-man move because I think if Gorman goes down, Sajasi would be who you'd bring up. Now, you could do it another way by having then Donovan play every day at second, but you would then look at, could Carp be your backup second baseman on the roster maybe for an emergency one day? He's played it there a little bit in a blowout this year. But I think they'd rather, with how Donovan's been in left field, you'd probably rather have him be able to play some left. If you send down Gorman and don't bring up an infielder, I think that kind of hamstrings you to basically you have to have Donovan at second base pretty much. I mean, I guess Crawford could. We've seen him play a little bit of third. So I don't know. We'll see. That's an interesting question, though. Allison says we have to win. Cardinals have to win before I could send the tweet. But if they do, I probably am going to send it. I'm just being honest with you guys. Justin said, do you think the Cardinals have a chance to win the division? There's a chance. And do I think they're likely to? No. Because they're 7 back. I assume the way people were talking about Milwaukee, that the Brewers won again tonight. They did. They beat the Reds 8-3. The Cardinals are 7 back in the division. Here's the reason they can still win the division. They play the Brewers 6 more times. So that's why. I mean, they still play them. And if you go 5-1 in those 6, suddenly it's a lot closer of a race. You sweep 6, well, yeah, you're probably going to win the division. But that's a long shot, right? That's not something you necessarily are going to bank on. So can they, Justin? They can. It's an uphill climb. And if you look at the schedule upcoming too, they play, the Padres for 4. They've got the Yankees coming up. The Twins are a wild card team in the AL that the Cardinals play coming up. Like the schedule after the Cincy series this next week is brutal. They need to beat the Reds 2 of 3, need to beat the Royals. And if you can do that, that would be 3 of your next 4 going into a tough stretch of games at home. And then, from there, it starts off at home, the stretch I'm talking about, but then it goes from there and stays difficult through at least that first week of September. Let me find it for you guys. Dodgers Brewers is the homestand that starts on the 16th of August. Yep, that'll be a proving ground. At Twins, host Padres, at Yankees after that. There's not one team in that group that's not a playoff team right now. And then it continues, that road trip that begins with the Yankees. You go at Brewers through the 4th of September. I mean, that is a gauntlet. And then it lets up a little bit. Mariners, I don't think they're in a playoff spot right now, but they'd like to be. Then it's hosting the Reds, at Blue Jays. They've struggled. Hosting the Pirates. We know about the Pirates. Guardians, and then you finish up on the West Coast with 2 non-playoff teams. But it's not going to be easy to win the division other than the fact that you have your say, right? You can play the Brewers and beat them. But if you don't do that, and look, it's hard to gain ground without an overwhelming victory. 5 out of 6. Because if you go 4 out of 6, you only gain the couple of games, right? You're still 5. You got to make up 5 throughout the rest of your schedule, which can be done. But the Brewers aren't slumping, right? They're playing good baseball right now, which is another thing that makes it tough. They better win the Dodgers series, says Einstein. Too many Dodger fan friends, and I will not be able to take it. And the Dodgers kind of need it too, because they're not running away with their division. They're not running away with the league. Like, you kind of figured Dodgers would be a shoo-in to have one of those divisional championship buys into the LDS, and they might not even have that. I can't wait, by the way, for the playoffs. I think the playoffs are going to be so interesting this year. We'd love to see the Cardinals find their way in, and I still think that's a very heavy possibility. They've got to do the work. But, man, I just think there's some very interesting teams around baseball that are going to make for a good, memorable October, in my opinion. Delio says that's why tomorrow night's game is so big in my eyes. Get up 2 in the win column out of Kansas City instead of breaking even. Yep. When it's a 2-game series, you either sweep or you split at this point. Those are the options, but it's better than the alternative. The Royals could be staring a sweep in the wrong direction in the face there. Doug says, can't wait to shed the dead weight on the roster this offseason or sooner. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like, I don't like to frame it that way, but I understand the frustration from fans when you think about Crawford. And look, I think Carp has been solid. And for as many times as I've said that, I should look it up and be able to give you his numbers and back that up here. Let me pull it up for you. I think his OPS is a little bit over 700 at last check, which is a lot. I mean, it's better than it was a couple of years ago when he was kind of on his last leg in St. Louis. Those 2 years, 2020 and 2021, he had a 640 OPS and then a 581. And that's when he was like playing way too much and people, were frustrated with him. This year, Carp has a 712 OPS. He's 99 OPS plus. He's basically been league average. For a guy off the bench, I don't have an issue with that. But could you make a case that could there be more upside for Luke and Baker in that role? Maybe, but it's okay to have some lefties on your bench. I think Carp would be a good lefty. Having a Sajasi, though, to kind of counterbalance on the bench would be nice. Having Jordan Walker, obviously, on this team would be nice. And then, look, he could kind of be the platoon with Nootbaar. For as much as Newt is kind of in our heads, always an everyday player, the stats this year, there are people thinking he should be sent down. I don't think that's going to happen. I think he gives you good versatility defensively in the outfield for one of the reasons that's not going to happen. And look, maybe the platoon is actually going to be Nootbaar Pham because he's already the right-hander that, you don't want to take out Burleson too often. But we'll see. I still think one more righty off the bench would make the balance of the roster look better. I think that's just my take on that. Serious question about the schedule making. Are these Sunday off days now scheduled from an MLB Players Union mandating them? I don't know that it's that. If it is, I don't know it, so I won't say that it is because I don't. What I do know is Cardinals and Royals are playing 4 games. Because of the balanced scheduling that they introduced last year, they had to kind of do something unique to figure out these interleague rivalries, I should say. And the result, instead of playing 6 like the Cardinals always historically seem to against the Royals, now they're playing 4. And that leaves a weird quirk in the schedule where at some point, like those have to, it has to be, you got to have a weekend series, and one of the days in the weekend is going to have to not be played. I think there was a Friday off game in recent years. It's the balanced scheduling, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but I believe it's the balanced scheduling that has caused that problem. But I do know that there was some talk with the CBA about certain things related to off days. And so, Neilio, that might have been part of it too. I just off the top of my head can't remember. That's a hard thing. When you guys ask me questions I don't know, I can't just Google it. I'm a pretty good Googler, but I can't do it live because you're looking at me. I still can't believe Einstein says I can't send the tweet just because I didn't send it before. So what? I could be a hypocrite. What would be the big deal about that? Who would know? Who's going to know other than you guys? There's only 75 people here. Y'all can keep a secret. Hit like, by the way. We're up to Tyler Webb number of likes. We're at 30 likes. We can get to let's get to Ryan Ludwig likes. Can we do that? Because Ryan Ludwig has been, helping out, had a good combo with Victor Scott, fix his swing. Tyler Webb, I was just double checking, was number 30 with the Cardinals. So that was the reference there. Ryan Ludwig, do we know the number? Who off the top of their head has Ryan Ludwig's number memorized? Jonathan says I can send the tweet. All right, see, Jonathan said I could, so you know what? I'm going to send it if the Cardinals win. I just committed to it. Come what may, I just committed to it. Yeah, I had to double check to make sure I was correct about Ludwig's number, but I was. Jen says I can send it. Allison says I can. Look, the eyes have it, folks. The eyes have it. No honor in this man. I respect the hell out of that. Ryan Ludwig, number 47, by the way. I didn't see anybody get that answer right. Being located in the KC Metro, the Royals fan base was really happy this annual home series with the Cardinals came back to being on a weekend. It was the 2-gamer for the weekdays for a while. Yep. And next year, they're doing a whole thing. MLB, I forget what they're calling it. It's like Rivalry Week or something like that in 2025. And it's kind of goofy because it's not like if you think, oh, Rivalry Week, I guess that'll be when the Cardinals play the Cubs. No, it's like almost secondary Rivalry Week, which makes it a little bit interesting. And the Cardinals and Royals are who gets matched up for that. And I was trying to find the graphic. I was trying to find the graphic, but I can't find it. Anyway, a lot of them are like Mets, Yankees, Angels, Dodgers, White Sox, Cubs, Cardinals, Royals. Like there are some obvious ones. There are some non-interleague rivalries in there, like Pirates, Phillies, Astros, Rangers. Well, that one's not. I was almost like Astros, NL. No, not anymore. So they're just kind of doing some rivalries, but it's not like necessarily the main rival that teams have, which to me kind of falls flat because it's like how many of those rivalries, like you had this idea to do rivalry weekend. It's May 16 through 18, and you're going to hype it up as a thing, but it's like how many of these rivalries actually are cared about? Okay, Mets, Yankees, Angels, Dodgers, sure. Chicago series, absolutely. Cardinals, Royals, yes. Pirates, Phillies, okay, I could see it. Astros, Rangers, yeah, but that's a division rivalry still. So that's I think on the list that I just gave the only division rivalry. But then there's some other ones that's like, well, the Mariners had to play somebody, right? I'm trying to find this graphic because there were a couple of them that were really funny. Where you're like, do the Mariners and Padres really hate each other like that? I don't really think that's a rivalry. Where obviously it's just like the last two at the dance that just had to be partnered up. The graphic was floating around on Twitter a couple weeks ago. Here it is. Rockies, Diamondbacks is like, all right, let's throw some divisional opponents. Guardians, Reds, like that's regional. Twins, Brewers could see it. Detroit and Toronto, okay, fair. The Florida teams, the Rays and Marlins, totally. Braves and Red Sox, all right, fine, I guess. I think that's more of a spring training rivalry because I think they play a lot of games in spring against each other. The Beltway, all right, DC, Washington taking on the Orioles, totally get that one. But there was a couple, obviously the Bay Area series, the A's and the Giants. But then it was like, okay, Seattle and the Padres, I guess that's one. But I guess there's more of them that are decent than I thought at first looking at it. So that's fair. That's fair. Bernie, what's going on, man? Hey, guys, for real. And Bernie Mikolas show, he just commented, what's up, B? Y'all have to subscribe to Bernie's channel. Get him to 1,000. Bernie Mikolas shouldn't go another day without being at 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. He just started his channel. It's brand new. I believe if you go youtube.com/@thebernieshow, you'll find it. And maybe he's already there. He should be close for sure. But Bernie, I mean, he's putting out daily content again, which is great to see. For those who have obviously listened to his radio show over the years and read his work for a long, long time. I mean, I've been reading Bernie Mikolas since I was a young kid in St. Louis. So, my goodness, make sure you guys all subscribe to Bernie. He's going to be putting out daily content, some great stuff. And look, he is up at 1,000. I woke up today and he was at like 700 or something. And so I should have known that he was going to be cruising toward 1,000. But that's great because he's going to now be able to join the YouTube partner program, which is well-deserved for sure. So appreciate you for hopping in, Bernie. Just having a sparkling water. I kind of raised my glass like, yeah, we're getting crazy. No, it's not like that. It's not like that. Memphis and Nashville. Yeah, you know what? The Bristol game, we didn't talk about that. The game that's going to be played in on the infield, basically, of Bristol Motor Speedway next year. Kind of could be a flavor to test the waters on maybe putting a team in Nashville, putting a team back in getting Tennessee to have a team, which I don't know that the Cardinals ownership would love that very much. I feel like there's a lot of Cardinals fans down in Tennessee. You know, the old KMOX reach spans quite a few of those middle America states, and a lot of Cardinals country is everywhere. So I'll be kind of curious to see if Nashville ends up having a team, what that would end up looking like. But that'll be interesting. I've said I want to see Austin get a team. I know that one's probably not likely, but I spent some time in that area and enjoy it. So it would just be a selfish reason for me to want to get to go back. Allison said it's strange that for the last 2 months of the season, Cardinals don't play the Cubs. Still not a huge fan of the new and improved balanced schedule. I complain about that a lot. And I think MLB must have heard me. Because when you look at the Cardinals 2025 schedule, I believe that the last series of the season next year is a Cardinals-Cubs series. Because I said for 2 years in a row, I think it was the same way last year and is this way this year, that the Cardinals and Cubs do not match up in September. And I said you would never catch MLB doing that to Yankees-Red Sox, right? Not playing in September. I just couldn't fathom it. Giants-Dodgers, I just couldn't fathom it. And so they did it to Cardinals-Cubs 2 years in a row. I get it. It's hard to make a schedule. We're going to complain about stuff. But next year at Wrigley, it's a little cold for Chicago, late September, but I bet we'll get good weather for that one. September 26th through 28th, Cardinals-Cubs to finish the season. We'll see if the Cubs and Cardinals are both in contention. I can't think of a better way to end the year next year if that ends up being the case. Very cool. Bill said he subscribed. Jonathan sub to Bernie. That's great, guys. Definitely make sure you do that before you go to bed tonight. Jonathan says, take the whole shape of the country. That is Cardinals territory. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's quite that way anymore, but you'll see Cardinals fans just about anywhere. But I certainly believe KMOX back in the day, before every game was on TV, and now we kind of say, well, we got the blackouts to deal with, so not always on TV. But yeah, KMOX really established a foothold for the Cardinals, and a lot of those states that you think like Tennessee, you'd think, okay, but they don't have a team. So that's understand why they would target Nashville and some other areas. I've seen Salt Lake City as potentially a place they could put a new team. I think if MLB is going to expand to 32, could get a couple of interesting new markets in there. But it's always going to come down to which city can drum up the ownership group and which city can get the public funding for a stadium built. On the west side of the state, they're dealing with that right now with the Royals and with the Kansas City Chiefs, trying to figure out. And of course, Kansas has legalized sports betting, and they're trying to drum up political support to get the teams to move a little bit further to the west across state lines. That'll be interesting. I know St. Louis has a probably very particular perspective on all of that, given everything that happened with the Rams. But, that's kind of what's going on over on the KC side of things. Allison said, I love the radio broadcasts. I grew up on them, and still with all the blackouts here in Iowa, love listening to the game. There's nothing like baseball on the radio. Nothing like it. All right, folks, we're about at an hour for this live stream. I am losing my voice and fast. I'm scrolling through, make sure I didn't miss any major comments. But as always, you can find me at b-schaefer12 on Twitter. Just shoot me a direct message if there's anything you wanted to know that I neglected to answer during the stream. It's not my intention, but sometimes, you know me in technology, I'm not able to see everything. No respect to non-coastal teams these days. I just felt like, look, if you're going to go with a balanced schedule, you're going to have to do some different things. You're going to tell me Yankees, Red Sox is ever going to be neglected in September when it could be a pennant race for both teams? Not a chance. And they did it 2 years in a row for Cardinals Cubs. People better get their heads wrapped around the idea of the Chiefs getting their own dome built in the KCK area. Kansas politicians have already started leaking it. And you know the advantage that they have. I know this is a Cardinals podcast, and a lot of people might not love the NFL. I have a big fantasy football channel that I'm trying to get going on YouTube, and I think I'm at 699 subscribers. If anybody wants to do me a real favor, because that's the one that I'm trying to get into the partner program still, you can subscribe to this. I'm going to put it in the chat. I think I just posted the link there. Subscribe to that channel I just posted in the YouTube chat, because that is my next project. But anyway, you're right, Neilio. That's the deal on the KC side. Kansas has legalized sports betting. Missouri doesn't. You may not like sports betting. You may not want to participate in it, and that's fine. But from like a political standpoint, what it means is revenue. And the Cardinals would love for sports betting to be legal in Missouri. They've been participatory of the pro teams in the state that have sort of lobbied to see if they could drum up some support for that. Because you think about the Cardinals and remember the reports of the big renovations the Cardinals are hoping to plan. It's not something that they've ever really come out publicly with, like, here's our ABCD, what we want. But I think the Cardinals would love to see sports betting legalized in Missouri, because if that happens, you could potentially kind of bake in a way to roll some of that revenue into the Cardinals getting the funding that they need to put those improvements to Busch Stadium out. So that's something that's kind of interesting. But because Kansas has it, they're basically saying, we'll take the Royals, we'll take the Chiefs. I don't know if it's going to work, but it's going to be I don't really know. I don't live on that side of the state to really know exactly what the temperature is for people that live on the Kansas side. Like, I'm sure you'd love to have your teams closer to you. For people that live on the Missouri side, is there that innate burning hatred for the state of Kansas like I have as a St. Louis born Mizzou guy? Probably not. I think everybody over there is, you just kind of intermingle, and it is what it is. The state border doesn't change a lot. But I don't know. There might be some Chiefs fans who would be really disappointed if the team moved over to the Kansas side. KCK will give the land to Hunt family for nothing. KC Mo will not. Done deal. And I like Arrowhead. I've never been to an Arrowhead Chiefs game. I've been to Mizzou BYU, of all things, in 20 at Arrowhead with a buddy of mine back when I was a student. But, yeah, I've never been to a Chiefs game. So, and for people who don't know, it's not like I'm a Chiefs fan, but we do talk a lot of the Chiefs on the radio in Columbia because that's the main team that is supported in Mid-Mo. So when I do my show there, we're talking a lot of Chiefs, and it's kind of gotten me into it a little bit. Bernie, for you to say that I inspired you is a big compliment, because you certainly have done that for me and so many others that have been reading and listening to your work for years. So, man, appreciate you. Jonathan, thank you for the sub on the fantasy channel. I've been doing mock drafts. That's kind of the deal on the fantasy channel for the month of August, trying to get that going. And then it'll be a place I can put. Honestly, it'll help everybody who's only a pure baseball fan on this channel, because it will allow me to never have to put football stuff on the Cardinals channel, right? If I have an outlet to talk about football, I can keep it insulated from the baseball fans who I know they just want to hear about baseball. They want to hear about the Cardinals, maybe some other MLB teams. That's why I started the second channel, because if I can get that going, all my Mizzou stuff, for the most part, can probably go over there. It's not to say I would never put Mizzou talk on this channel, because Mizzou is going to be a pretty popular topic here coming up in a few weeks. But, I digress. Bernie is indeed an institution, Neilio, 100%. Any updates on the TV deal for next year? Bill, nothing that I'm aware of. And look, I think the Cardinals are working diligently behind the scenes to be ready for anything, to be prepared. Bill DeWitt III has been I think spending a good deal of his time in recent months and over the past year plus, just sort of kind of figuring out some of the things that they may need to know if the Cardinals ever need to take over the media rights deal. If they get their rights given back to them because of the Diamond Sports Group and the Bally Sports situation, if that should come to pass, they're going to have to be ready to almost start their own digital streaming platform and give the games directly to the fans, which I honestly think they would be happy to do. I think they dislike the blackouts almost as much as the fans do, because they know there are people out there that would like to access Cardinals baseball that cannot. And that, I think that's a big frustration for the Cardinals as well. Neilio, I did mention Busch Stadium upgrades. It was a story in the Riverfront Times back when the Riverfront Times existed like a couple months ago that basically said there's an expectation that the Cardinals are prepping to ask for public funding, and they were throwing out some pretty wild numbers in the 9-figure range, maybe 500 million. But there's some upgrades that are needed for Busch Stadium that are maybe more kind of behind the scenes things. Some of it would maybe impact fans. A lot of it could just be sort of behind the scenes sort of maintenance that's needed. But this was not something that the Cardinals have announced. I think it got reported that they were considering or kind of gearing up to do this, and it's still not happened yet. So when that kind of was reported, obviously, I think it was Martin Kilcoyne that asked Bill DeWitt III about it, and he said, well, we're not really at the stage yet to where we're ready to act on this, but it is something that I think could be in the offing. But like I said, I feel like if sports betting were legalized in Missouri, that could be an avenue to where they're not going to ask for, a new tax or something necessarily to get this funding, and then there'd have to be a vote or however it would work. It might be able to be raised through, a tax on sports betting or whatever it is. The legalese is a little bit beyond me, but that could be a way that they could kind of get what they're looking for. And it comes from people who are obviously interested in it, at least supporting sports, because they're betting on it, and that would be the way that they could get some of that funding. 2 games on a weekend home series for the last 15 years. And to this day, Busch still looks and feels special. They did a nice job. With that ballpark. Definitely did a nice job with it. Back, 06? Was 06 the first year of – 05 was the last year of the old Busch. Because I remember when Pujols hit that ball off of Brad Lidge, I thought it was great. And I was a kid at the time, but I thought it was great that they got to come back home. Even if they weren't going to win the series, at least they got to play one more game at Old Busch, was sort of my thought. And if I'm not mistaken, one more is all they got that year. So there you go. All right, guys, we're a little bit over an hour. I think I am going to wrap things up here because I think I got to most of the comments. If I missed it, I'm at b-schaefer12 on Twitter. Thank you guys so much for spending about an hour with me tonight. It's almost midnight, but I am going to log out and get this posted on the podcast platform. So subscribe to B-Shape Daily. Hit up that fantasy football channel as well. Thank you, Jonathan, for hitting that up. And thanks to Bernie Mikolas for hopping in. Appreciate you guys as always, and we'll talk to you next time on B-Shape Daily Live. Peace.